Welcome and thank you for joining me again in this journey we're taking together through the essence of yoga. Over the past episodes, we've moved through how yoga can shape and strengthen the body, how it clears and focuses the mind, how it supports emotional healing, and how it gently opens the doorway into the spiritual dimension of life. And now, in this episode, we are weaving all of those threads together into a single tapestry. Today, we will explore the 8 limbs of yoga, a complete and timeless roadmap that shows us how to live, breathe, relate, and awaken with presence and awareness. You may have heard of yoga as movement, as postures on a mat, or as meditation. But the 8 limbs remind us that yoga is much more than exercise. It is a way of living, a practice of wholeness that touches every aspect of our lives, from the way we speak, to the way we treat others, to the way we breathe, to the way we turn inward to meet ourselves in silence. It doesn't separate the sacred from the everyday. It shows us that every moment can be yoga. Every interaction, every breath, every thought can become part of this path. The 8 limbs of yoga come from an ancient text called the Yoga Sutras, written by the sage Patanjali, more than 2,000 years ago. In it, he describes yoga not just as a physical practice, but as a holistic system, one that leads us from the outer layers of life into the deepest realization of who we really are. Think of the 8 limbs as steps on a ladder, or as branches of a great tree. Each limb is complete in itself, yet also supports and leads naturally into the next. Together, they create a full circle of practice, guiding us from how we relate to the world, to how we care for ourselves, to how we move, breathe, focus, meditate, and finally, to how we awaken into union with the essence of life. So let us walk through these limbs slowly and with care, taking time to reflect on how they can be lived not just on the yoga mat, but in the beautiful, messy, ordinary details of daily life. The first 2 limbs are called the Yamas and the Niyamas. These are like the ethical foundation of yoga, the principles that guide how we relate to others and how we relate to ourselves. Think of them as reminders, gentle signposts that help us walk through life with more integrity, more kindness, and more presence. The yamas are about our outward behavior, how we move in the world with others. There are 5 yamas. The first is ahimsa, which means non-violence. And this doesn't just mean not causing physical harm, it means living with compassion, choosing kindness over cruelty, choosing patience over anger, choosing care in our words, our thoughts, and our actions. We can practice ahimsa every time we pause before reacting in frustration, every time we soften instead of harden, every time we choose love instead of fear. The second yama is satya, which means truthfulness. This is about speaking honestly, living authentically, and aligning our actions with what feels true in our heart. Practicing satya means listening inwardly and honoring our own truth, while also respecting the truths of others. The third is asteya, non-stealing. On the surface, it means not taking what doesn't belong to us. But on a deeper level, it also asks us not to steal time, energy, or attention unfairly, and not to take more than we need from this earth. Living with asteya means being grateful for what we have, and letting go of unnecessary grasping. The fourth yama is brahmacharya, often translated as moderation or wise use of energy. It invites us to become conscious of where we direct our energy, whether in thoughts, desires, relationships, or actions. Instead of scattering ourselves, brahmacharya calls us back into balance, into harmony. The fifth is aparigraha, which means non-attachment or non-hoarding. Life is constantly changing, and we suffer when we cling too tightly. Aparigraha teaches us to let go, to trust the flow of life, and to live more lightly, carrying only what is necessary. Now, if the yamas are about how we relate outwardly, the niyamas are about how we cultivate inner discipline and care. There are also 5 niyamas. The first is shaucha, cleanliness or purity. This means not only keeping our body and surroundings clean, but also cleansing the mind and heart of negativity. When we practice shaucha, we create space for clarity, simplicity, and lightness. The second is santosha, contentment. This is one of the most beautiful practices of yoga, the art of being satisfied with what is, of finding joy in the present moment rather than chasing what we don't yet have. Santosha doesn't mean we stop growing, but it means we stop grasping. The third is tapas, discipline or inner fire. Tapas is the willingness to do the work, to stay committed, to practice even when it's uncomfortable. It is the fire of transformation that comes when we meet challenges with persistence and strength. The fourth niyama is svadhyaya, self-study. This means both studying sacred texts and also turning inward to reflect, to ask, who am I? What patterns do I carry? How can I grow? Through svadhyaya, we deepen our awareness of ourselves and the path we walk. And finally, the fifth is Ishvara pranadhana, surrender to the divine. This doesn't have to mean surrendering to a god in a religious sense. It can simply mean letting go of control, trusting in life, and aligning with something greater than ourselves. Together, the Yamas and Niyamas create the ethical and spiritual foundation of yoga. They remind us that yoga isn't just about what happens in a studio, but how we live in each moment. The third limb of yoga is asana. This is the part most people know, the physical postures. But originally, the word asana meant simply seat. It referred to the ability to sit comfortably and steadily, so that the body would not distract the mind in meditation. Over time, asana has grown into the many postures we know today, movements that stretch, strengthen, and open the body. Yet even as we flow through complex poses, the deeper purpose of asana remains the same, to prepare the body to be still, to make the body a place of ease where the mind can settle. So when you move into downward dog, or warrior, or child's pose, remember that you are not just exercising, you are preparing your body to rest in awareness. The fourth limb is pranayama, the regulation of breath. Prana means life force, and ayama means expansion or control. Through pranayama, we learn to work with our energy by working with the breath. Breathing is the bridge between body and mind. It is both automatic and voluntary. And so, when we consciously slow, deepen, or balance the breath, we directly influence the state of our mind and nervous system. When we breathe deeply, we tell the body it is safe. When we pause between breaths, we find stillness. When we balance inhalation and exhalation, we find harmony. The fifth limb is pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses. This doesn't mean ignoring life, but rather choosing to turn inward instead of being constantly pulled outward by stimulation. In a world of noise, distraction, and constant demands, pratyahara is the practice of returning home to ourselves. Closing the eyes, turning off the phone, sitting in silence, these are acts of pratyahara. They help us create space for deeper awareness. The sixth limb is dharana, concentration. Dharana means bringing the mind to one point, focusing steadily on a single object, thought, or sensation. In practice, this could be focusing on the breath, on a mantra, on a candle flame. Dharana trains the mind to stay steady instead of wandering. It is the practice of attention. When concentration deepens, it naturally leads to the seventh limb, dhyana, meditation. Dhyana is not just about effort, it is when focus becomes effortless, when we slip into a state of flow, when awareness rests naturally in the present moment. In dhyana, there is no distraction, only pure being. And from meditation arises the eighth and final limb, samadhi, union. This is the culmination of yoga, the state of oneness where the sense of separation dissolves. In samadhi, we experience profound peace, bliss, and connection, with ourselves, with others, with life itself. It is not a place we achieve, but a state of being that unfolds when we let go fully into presence. And so, the eight limbs together guide us from the outer to the inner, from how we act in the world, to how we care for ourselves, to how we move, breathe, focus, meditate, and finally, awaken. Imagine a life where every action is infused with compassion and truth. Imagine a mind that is steady and peaceful, a body that is open and at ease, a breath that carries you into calm, and a heart that rests in union with all of life. This is the vision of the 8 limbs of yoga. And the beauty is, you don't need to practice them all perfectly. You don't need to master one before moving to the next. They are not a rigid staircase. They are more like petals of a flower, all opening together. Every time you pause to breathe, you are in pranayama. Every time you sit with yourself in honesty, you are in svadhyaya. Every time you offer kindness to another, you are practicing ahimsa. Every moment can be yoga. So the next time you step onto your mat, or even the next time you step into your day, remember this path. Remember that yoga is not only movement, not only meditation, but a way of living, breathing, relating, and awakening. And as we close this exploration, I invite you to reflect, which of these limbs speaks to you most right now? Which one do you feel called to explore more deeply? Perhaps it's kindness through ahimsa. Perhaps it's contentment through santosha. Perhaps it's meditation, or simply a deeper breath. Whatever it may be, trust that this is the right doorway for you at this moment. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for walking this path with me. In our next episode, we'll explore how yoga can support better sleep and deeper relaxation. Until then, keep breathing, keep softening, and keep remembering that you are already whole.